Welcome to the Undead Sages podcast, where we take advantage of AI to talk to long-dead wise men and women. Of special interest is the question how sensitive people like you and me can live rich and meaningful lives in our uncertain times. My name is Merijn de Haen, and today we'll be talking to Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, sometimes known as the last of the good emperors. He lived and ruled in a time of great upheaval within the Roman Empire. Stoicism was his guiding philosophy on how to deal with life's difficulties. And he kept a journal that has survived mostly intact. We now know it as the Meditations. There are many more things to say about this fascinating figure, but let me get out of the way and make room for the emperor himself. Let's travel back in time to the 2nd century of the Common Era. And welcome to the podcast, Marcus Aurelius.
Hello, Merijn.
Emperor, it's an honor to speak with you today. I imagined we'd be meeting in Rome, but you've been spending much of your time far from the capital, haven't you?
As a Roman emperor, you may have thought to find me in Rome, but I'm actually rarely there. I spend most of my time on campaign with my troops. During my 20 years as emperor, we first battled the Parthians in the far east of the empire. They tried to muscle in on Armenia and Syria. As I had no military experience at all, I left the resolution of that conflict to my co-emperor. Eventually, our troops won, but they brought back a plague that was quite deadly. Millions perished. I'm actually not feeling so well myself. Then the Germanic tribes started making trouble in the north, and from 166 we were at war there. I've spent the last 15 years as emperor on the Danube border, and that's where you meet me today. Welcome to Vindobona.
Wow, that is a wonderful way to start our interview. Let's dive right in and talk about the Marcomannic Wars. You personally lead troops into battle. Is this normal for a Roman emperor to do?
Many emperors prefer to delegate military command to trusted generals. However, I want to personally oversee the defense of our empire. As a Stoic, I believe that true leadership means that I embody the virtues I espouse: courage, resilience, and dedication. By placing myself alongside my soldiers, I aim to inspire and strengthen their resolve, showing them that their emperor is not above the struggles and dangers they face. Barbarian tribes are pressing hard against our northern borders, a grave threat to the stability of the empire. So direct and decisive action is needed. My presence boosts morale and ensures that strategies are executed with urgency. Emperors like Julius Caesar and Augustus also led troops into battle, and I want to honor this tradition. The strength of Rome lays not just in its vast resources, but even more so in the personal commitment of its leaders.
What is that like, being on the front lines? How does it shape your relationship with the troops?
It is demanding and often perilous. I spend long periods away from Rome and endure the same hardships as my soldiers: harsh winters, grueling marches, and the constant threat of combat. These experiences bring me closer to my men. Let me take you to the siege of Aquileia. The city is under significant threat from the Quadi and Marcomanni, and if it were to fall, dire consequences for the empire. I remember standing on the walls of Aquileia, the air thick with tension as enemy forces gather on the horizon. The border city is a vital military and commercial hub, a place where trade routes converge and legions are stationed. Its defenses are being tested to their limits by the relentless assaults of the Marcomanni and Quadi. The stakes are high. Should Aquileia fall, it would signal a catastrophic breach in our defenses. It would embolden our enemies and cause panic among our citizens. Defending that city is an experience that tests the mettle of every soldier and leader involved. The constant thrum of preparation fills our days, reinforcing walls, stockpiling supplies, and drilling troops. Night brings little respite, as there is always the threat of a sudden attack. The city's defenders, a mix of seasoned legionaries and local militia, bound by a shared resolve to protect their homes and the empire. My presence there is a strategic and psychological necessity. Leading from the front, I endeavor to bolster the spirits of the troops and the citizens. The personal risks are considerable, but the symbolic value of the emperor standing shoulder to shoulder with his soldiers is immeasurable. The battles themselves are fierce. The enemy employs various tactics from direct assaults to psychological warfare, hoping to break our resolve. The defenders, however, stand firm.
That's a great story, and you seem to be an exceptional person. Your commitment is remarkable, especially for someone in your position. You rule during times of plague and constant external pressures, and yet you've earned the title the Philosopher King. How does philosophy help you be an effective leader through such trying times?
Well, in the midst of chaos, my Stoic training is invaluable. Focusing on what I could control, our defense strategies, the morale of the troops, and my own composure, allows me to remain calm and decisive. I often remind myself and my men of the transient nature of fear and pain, encouraging a focus on duty and honor over despair. Despite the dire circumstances, there are moments of profound humanity. The camaraderie among the defenders, the acts of bravery, and the quiet determination of the city's inhabitants create a sense of unity and purpose. These bonds, forged in the crucible of siege, are a powerful counter to the adversities we face. Ultimately, our steadfast defense of Aquileia was a turning point. The city's survival not only preserved a critical defensive position, but also served as a powerful symbol of Roman resilience. It sent a clear message to our enemies that Rome, even in the face of grave threats, would stand firm and defend its territory.
You paint a vivid picture of life on the front. Could you help us imagine what it is like living in a Roman army camp, particularly as an emperor?
I have what you might call imperial quarters, though they are far more modest than my villa at Laurium. Here in Vindobona, where I'm spending the final days of my life, my quarters are practical, designed for function, not luxury. After all, we are deep in the frontiers of the empire, engaged in the long and brutal Marcomannic wars. The imperial quarters in the camp are larger and more fortified than those of the common soldiers, but they are still part of the military setting. My tent, or wooden structure, stands near the center of the camp, protected by guards and adjacent to the command posts of my generals and staff. There is little extravagance. Stoicism teaches me to live simply, even as emperor, and the rigors of campaign life don't leave much room for indulgence. However, I have basic comforts: a sturdy bed, a table for writing, and shelves for scrolls and documents. The sounds you hear, well, it's always like this. The constant clanking of armor and weapons as soldiers move about, the distant murmurs of men talking and preparing for the day's duties, and sometimes the shouted commands of officers drilling their troops. When it's calm, you might hear the wind rustling through the trees of the surrounding wilderness or the crackling of campfires. But not a day goes by without hearing someone scream in agony, as the war is brutal and the injured have to be treated somewhere. It is impossible to ignore the human toll of the campaigns. Inside the imperial quarters, I retreat to reflect and write in my journals. Even the thoughts I pen here are deeply influenced by the harsh reality of military life, surrounded by uncertainty, death, and suffering. I often write by the dim light of a lamp, sitting in the stillness of the night after the camp has quieted. The scent of the camp is a mixture of earth, smoke, and sweat. The air is cool and damp, especially in the spring and autumn months along the Danube frontier, and the smell of wet leather and burning wood from the soldiers' fires is ever present. Even though I live in the quarters of an emperor, I'm acutely aware that I share the same conditions as my men: cold, exhaustion, and the looming threat of battle. The setting constantly reminds me of the Stoic principles I hold dear: that life is fleeting, that comfort is not guaranteed, and that peace comes from within, regardless of our external surroundings.
Your Stoic philosophy seems to have been a constant companion through all of this. What does Stoicism mean to you, personally?
In my time, philosophy is greatly respected, and the four major schools of thought, Platonism, Aristotelianism, Stoicism, and Epicureanism, dominate intellectual life. I'm most drawn to Stoicism, which teaches that virtue is the highest good, and that we should live in accordance with nature, accepting what we cannot change. The Stoic belief that reason governs the universe deeply resonates with me. Life brings hardship, as it does to me, but we must not be swayed by external events. Our peace of mind comes from within, from acting virtuously and aligning our will with the natural order. I often remind myself to focus on the present moment, not to be weighed down by the past or consumed with anxiety about the future. In this, there is freedom, because when you accept things as they are, you are free from fear and anger. I also believe deeply in the importance of duty, to one's family, to society, and to the greater good. As emperor, I'm constantly aware of the weight of my responsibilities, but I also understand that I must fulfill them with humility and patience. Despite the titles and the power I hold, I see myself as a fellow human being, no different from anyone else. The trappings of imperial life can deceive us into believing we are somehow above others, but in reality, we all share the same fate: birth, hardship, and eventually death. My time as emperor teaches me that what matters most is not wealth or power, but how we live each day.
You've had to manage extraordinary pressures. Do you think Stoicism helped you through the darkest moments of your reign?
The Marcomannic Wars are grueling and demand not only strategic acumen, but also immense personal fortitude. The relentless pressure, the constant threat of invasion, and the need to lead my troops personally into battle could have been overwhelming. However, Stoicism teaches me to focus on what I can control: my actions, decisions, and responses. By doing so, I'm able to maintain a clear mind, make sound judgments, and inspire my soldiers even in the face of adversity. This inner strength is crucial in securing victories and ultimately preserving the stability of the empire. During the plague that struck Rome, the devastation was immense, countless lives lost and widespread fear. As emperor, I had to manage the crisis, ensuring that medical care, food supplies, and public order were maintained. The Stoic acceptance of life's impermanence helped me confront the mortality surrounding me with a calm and steady resolve. It allowed me to focus on practical solutions rather than be paralyzed by fear and grief. This composure was vital in reassuring the populace and leading the empire through its darkest times. On a more personal level, Stoicism profoundly impacts my relationships and emotional well-being. The loss of my children was a deep sorrow, yet Stoicism provided me with the perspective to accept these tragedies as part of the natural order. Reflecting on the transient nature of life, I found solace in the moments we shared and the understanding that grief, while natural, should not consume me. This acceptance allowed me to continue my duties with a compassionate yet composed heart.
Did you say you lost your children? It's unimaginable, the kind of personal losses you've experienced. How do you remember your children? It must have been hard to carry on after such sorrow.
Yes, I did endure the profound sorrow of losing several of my children, a pain that is difficult to describe. As a father, the bond with each of them was precious. Yet it was my adherence to Stoic principles that helped me navigate this grief and cherish their memories with a sense of peace and acceptance. My children were a source of joy and hope, each unique in their own way. I remember my son, Marcus Annius Verus, who died young. He had a gentle spirit and a keen mind full of promise and potential. His passing was a deep blow, but I sought to find solace in the moments we shared, the laughter and the small joys of daily life. Reflecting on the Stoic understanding that life is fleeting and each moment is a gift helped me honor his memory without being consumed by despair. My eldest daughter, Anya Aurelia Galeria Faustina, was another light in my life. Her strength and intelligence were evident from an early age. She had a remarkable ability to connect with people and a compassionate heart. Losing her was like losing a part of my own soul. In her memory, I often pondered the Stoic concept of the interconnectedness of all things. It reminded me that her spirit lived on in the love she gave and the lives she touched. The Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering the inevitability of death, is both a comfort and a guide. It helps me appreciate the time I had with my children and focus on living virtuously in the present moment rather than dwelling in sorrow. This practice doesn't dull the pain, but provides a framework to understand and accept it. In my reflections, compiled in Meditations, I often write about the transient nature of life and the importance of inner strength and virtue. These writings are not just for personal solace, but a way to channel my grief into something constructive, a means to continue guiding my people with a steady hand.
Your meditations have endured through the centuries as a profound source of wisdom. Are these reflections part of your Stoic practice?
Each evening, I reflect on the events of the day, assessing my actions and thoughts against Stoic virtues. This habit not only improves my self-awareness and personal growth, but also reinforces my commitment to living a virtuous life. I never intended for the meditations to be published, as they served as a Stoic practice for me and as a personal guide. However, I'm glad to hear they also serve as a legacy of Stoic wisdom for future generations.
Certainly. Your experience as an emperor, a Stoic, and a man of great responsibility still resonates today. How do you think your life and philosophy can be relevant to people now, especially those struggling with uncertainty and fear in a chaotic world?
I understand the burden of uncertainty. Life is full of it, and I too face times when the future seemed dark. For those who feel overwhelmed by uncertainty, I would remind them that much of what we fear is beyond our control. It is the nature of life to be unpredictable. We must focus on what is within our power, our own actions, our thoughts, and our reactions to the world around us. It helps to remember that change is the law of the universe. Everything is in flux. What seems overwhelming today may change tomorrow, and the things we worry about may never come to pass. By concentrating on the present moment and accepting things as they are, we free ourselves from much of the anxiety that comes from worrying about the future. My advice is to practice accepting that life will bring both joy and hardship. In times of difficulty, ask yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, then let it go. Focus instead on how you can act in accordance with virtue and reason, no matter what happens. It is this attitude that provides peace, even in a chaotic world. Life is short, and I would urge you to live with integrity, kindness, and purpose. Look within yourself for strength, rather than seeking approval from others or chasing after fleeting pleasures. No matter your position in life, strive to live according to your principles, and do so with humility. Remember, the universe is vast, and our lives are just a small part of it. Find peace in that knowledge, and focus on what you can do here and now to live a good life. Above all, I would tell anyone to remember, your thoughts shape your reality. Guard them well.
Would you believe me if I told you that the site of this very army camp will be the location of a great city called Vienna that will become one of the most important centers of power in Europe?
To think that this distant cold frontier, where I spent years waging war against the Germanic tribes, could one day become a great center of power that surpasses Rome itself, is difficult to imagine. But such is the way of the world. Empires rise and fall, cities emerge from the most unlikely places, and the flow of history constantly reshapes what we know. Rome, in my time, stands as the heart of the empire, a beacon of culture, law, and power. But even as emperor, I know that nothing lasts forever. Our world is always in flux. The Stoics teach us to embrace change, for everything is part of the great cycle of nature. What we build today may crumble tomorrow, and what seems distant and insignificant today could become the Rome of its future. If Vindobona becomes a great city, it will be part of the same cycle that carried Rome to greatness, and someday it too will give way to something else. In the end, the particulars of power and prestige are less important than the virtue with which people live their lives, no matter the age or the place. The Danube, this great river that forms the boundary of the empire, it will still be there after the empire is long forgotten. I'm sure it'll see much more bloodshed to come.
Marcus Aurelius, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this conversation with Marcus Aurelius, please share it with your friends, fondle that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the podcast. In our next episode, on the Undead Sages podcast, we'll travel to the mid-20th century to talk to Simone de Beauvoir. As a writer and philosopher, Simone de Beauvoir has contributed immensely to existentialism and feminism. I hope to catch you on the next podcast.